Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, I will show you how to create an old-timey sepia toned picture in Johanna's Christmas by Johanna Basford. So I don't know if it's the time of year or what, but I just love the look of vintage or old-fashioned nostalgic things at Christmas. It brings so many memories of visiting my grandparents when I was young, and then now having some of these keepsakes that I bring out at Christmas time. Like this tissue paper that wraps up these angels from my grandma, it still smells like my grandma, which I think is pretty amazing. So I always think of her at Christmas. So when I saw a colorist on YouTube, and her channel is called A Cluttered Life, and the video is called Completed Pages in Maria Trolle's books. She was doing a sepia toned picture, and I just thought it looked really cool. So I quickly looked through my books and I found this page, which I thought, because it looks kind of old-timey with this, I believe it's called a gramophone. Yeah, I thought it would work out good here. And then, so I was also kind of looking for different backgrounds, and I saw one of Colorfully Optimistic's on her channel, and the video was called Blurred Bokeh, which I think will work well because there's so much background here. So it's not quite like a bokeh, you know, with it almost looks like spots or lights kind of in the blurred in the background, but it will be something similar. So I wanted something easy, but you know, still something unique that could go along in this background. So those videos are what influenced this picture today. So I would love to hear from you. Leave me a comment on any special keepsakes that you treasure. My first step is watercolor, so I'm putting some wax paper behind my page. And since my supplies are going to be in view here, I will put a piece on top of this page just in case I have any water drops. With watercolors, you need water, and the watercolor brand I'm using is called Pretty Excellent, which I purchased on Amazon last year. I think the color of the Pretty Teal tin suckered me in. But it has a good range of colors, and look, it even has a sepia color, perfect for my page. So I looked up the definition of sepia, and here is what I found. It's a reddish brown color associated particularly with monochrome photographs of the 19th and early 20th centuries. And it's also named after the rich brown pigment derived from the ink sac of the common cuttlefish sepia. The brush I'm using is not a watercolor brush. It's a wide, flat brush, and I'm not very fluent in watercolor, but from my little experience in coloring books is that you have to work fast. Most of the time the books don't have watercolor paper, and this paper is thicker, almost like cardstock, and it's one-sided. But you still have to be careful of how much water and how much contact with the paper you have, because it can cause pilling. You don't have much playtime, so you have to work quickly before it dries. So I'm dipping the brush in water and working with about a third of the page, just getting it wet, not damp or soaking, but just wet. And I'm playing around with this first to see what will be best. First, I try adding water and the paint on a ceramic dish and then applying. And next I'll add some paint directly to the page. As you can see, when applied heavily, it doesn't want to move. I'm okay with some little streaks here and there. It will just help with that old kind of distressed look. But as you can see, you do have to move kind of fast. There is no playtime at all, so be careful when applying too much. Okay, the back side actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to let this completely dry and then I'll be back. When it was almost dry, I did put some heavy books on top so it finished drying flat. Not sure if you noticed, but the paint did dry lighter than when it was wet. For my next experiment, I'll be using some chalk pastels and this stencil, circle stencil, which I think is like a drafting tool, a Kneadable eraser, which reminds me of Silly Putty, and an X-Acto knife. So I'll use the X-Acto knife to scrape off some of the chalk pastel onto this plate, and it's going to leave this kind of chalky, powdery stuff, and that is what you'll use to pick up and spread on the page. So I'm going to be using 3 colors, this kind of golden yellow, a more reddish brown, and a little bit darker brown. With these chalks, I'm going to try to create a blurry bokeh effect. I thought I would try to do it on the whole background, but I think I'll just concentrate on the on behind the image. So to apply it to the page, I'm using these very dense and soft makeup brushes. I tried a cotton ball like Corey used on her channel, but it could be my cheap pastels. The dust just doesn't show up with the cotton ball. These brushes worked best for my pastels, but definitely experiment with what you have. And I think I'll use more of this medium size brush. It's easier to control. And I'm thinking I want it light up at the top and going darker towards the bottom. All right, and now using a clean dusting brush, I'm just going to dust away some of this loose powder. And always kind of take a step back and look at it from different angles and see if it needs anything else. So I'm just reapplying in certain areas and then it should be good. Next, I'm using the circle stencil and the eraser putty, or I call it eraser putty. It's actually a kneadable eraser, and an electric eraser. Okay, so to make those circle in the bokeh, I am just laying down the stencil and then I'm using that putty to pick up the chalk pastel. So I just kind of squeeze it in the little circle and pull it up. I swear it's almost like Silly Putty. I don't know if anyone remembers playing with Silly Putty, picking up the newspaper or comic images from a newspaper. That's what it reminds me of. Anyway, it's harder to see on these lighter shades here, but it is picking it up. So you'll definitely be able to see it better when I do it in the darker shades. And I don't really have any rhyme or reason to which circle I'm using or where I'm placing it. I am trying to pick some of the smaller circles though, but other than that, it's just pretty random. The electric eraser will pick up more of the dust. So I will have some areas that are faint from the Kneadable eraser, and then with the electric eraser, the circles will be brighter. So keep in mind this is a very simplified version of a bokeh effect. Okay, and just reapplying some of the darker shades to kind of camouflage some of those streaky watercolor bits. Okay, I'm going to spray with a workable fixative and be right back. All right, the next stage is going to be in color pencil. So I'm going to be creating some more like richer sepia tones within the image. So I'll be using Prisma colors 940, 941, 946, and 1099. So this will just be on the image. I'm going to bring you up closer here, and I'm just going to work on the main gramophone image, and I will show you how I do that, and then I'll work the rest of it off camera. Because I tend to color a little heavy-handed, I tend to start with the lightest or a medium shade first. Prisma colors are easy to work with and can take a lot of layering if you build up those layers being kind of light-handed. So I'm first putting down a very light base of this golden yellow, and then I'll just start building my colors. Okay, now I can take a darker brown and I can concentrate more on the shadow areas. So just building up that shadow, still trying to color with light pressure. And I just go back and forth between this color and my lighter shade, and then I'll even introduce a darker shade. And that way I have some like higher contrast with the shadows. Okay, so now I'm using a blender pencil, and this is my friend throughout the whole page. Because I'm coloring really lightly, you're getting a lot of the pencil texture lines. So using the blender will kind of help smooth those out, help blend those colors. And it's just kind of cool. You can really see after you use the colorless blender, it kind of mushes all those pigments together and flattens the paper, and then it just makes the colors kind of a little bit brighter and stand out a little bit more. I want to add a really washed out or kind of low saturation of color in the bow and ornaments. So after I color in the sepia tones, then I'll just add a touch of color and blend those out. So I'm just barely kind of scratching some color in here, and then I'll take the blender again and smooth out that color. I finished with the sepia tones, and now I will add some faded color to the ornaments. The greens I'm using are 912 and 908. And the blue colors are going to be 1086 and 936. And I'll use the same reds as in the bow. So as I'm coloring, I'm thinking of my highlight and shadow area, and we'll keep the highlight area really light, so barely putting any color on there, and then a little bit heavier on the shadow area. When I get heavy-handed, I will use the electric eraser to create that highlight again. I did use the colorless blender after I colored all the sepia shades, and I will use it again after I add some color. Now that the color is finished, I'm wanting to add some brighter white pieces throughout the image. I'm going to use my white Prismacolor pencil just to help brighten up some of the background circles. I'm doing most of them. I mean, some of them I do want a little bit more faint, but this will just help a little bit more with the contrast. I tried the white color pencil and the stars, but it was just not bright enough. So I then go to my trusty Posca pen to fill in the stars and some parts of the ornaments. This will make it stand out a lot brighter. I have to do a couple coats, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to go over the black lines or just fill in the stars. At first, I covered the black lines, but then I later went back and put the black lines back in. Okay, here it is with all the stars filled in. I really like the way the white stands out against the browns. Okay, I forgot to color in the little birds here, so I'll do that real quick. Okay, so since this is supposed to look more old-fashioned, kind of worn, distressed, this is the best time to break out all my distressing supplies. So I want the edges to look a little bit more worn. I'm using a Tim Holtz Distress Ink blending tool, which has like a little sponge applicator. And then the ink is a close to my heart product called Desert Sand. And it is just more of a kind of a yellowish tan color. So I'm going to rub this all over the edges, thinking of more of like a vignette style. It's not, very dark, but it's still, I'm going to concentrate a little bit heavier on the shadows and then just kind of run it down the edges. The next applicator is from Close to My Heart, and the ink is a Tim Holtz Distress ink, and the color is called Vintage Photo. So this applicator is kind of a very porous, kind of plasticky, sponge-like material, and you're just going to dab it in the ink and then on the paper, and it just leaves little tiny speckled designs. All right, I'll zoom in here so you can actually see what it's doing. All right, final thoughts. So overall, I think it definitely has that sepia feel. I kind of wish I spent more time on that bokeh effect, maybe taking it around the whole background, making it more defined, but this time of year, I'm really more about getting things done and done fast. I do like the distress look and just a hint of color with the ornaments, and then the brightness of the stars I think really pops. So let me know what you think, and thanks for watching. See you next time.